Nintendo is no stranger to allowing other developers to work on its properties. Zelda, Mario, and Metroid games have all been crafted by outside creatives in the past. Fans freaked when fledgling developer Retro announced it was working on Metroid Prime, yet it shocked with its quality and adherence to franchise staples. And now Team Ninja is hoping to have similar results with the 2D-3D hybrid Metroid Other M. Can the minds behind Ninja Gaiden deliver?
Come on, Samus. Let's go next door.
I laid Mother Brain to waste, and the explosion that followed destroyed planet Zebes, along with the remains of Mother Brain, the space pirates, and my long-standing nemesis, Ridley.
Up until this point, the Metroid story has been kept pretty simple, and series heroine Samus Aran has uttered little more than a grunt. All that changes with Other M. Not only does Samus talk, she tends to blather on, using far too many words to describe the obvious.
The word he so obviously chose. Outsider.
The story picks up right after Super Metroid. Having destroyed Mother Brain and wiping Metroids from the galaxy, she responds to a distress call from a wayward space station, only to find the Galactic Federation and her former commander already on the scene. What follows is a ham-fisted story and wordy script that explores the relationship between master and servant.
While I was young and inexperienced, I left Adam's command and set out on my path as a solitary bounty hunter.
Many holes are filled in the series canon, but it comes at a price. If Other M has its say, Samus is nowhere near as interesting as initially perceived. Bioweapons, betrayal, and all the other tropes that permeate the genre are represented, and they're undermined by writing that appears to be lost in translation.
It touched me on some level that Adam would acknowledge that past by calling me something delicate, like lady.
At least the plot twists aren't obvious, and fans will lap up each one of the lavishly produced CG sequences.
Days went by in their quiet way, and people's recollections of Metroids and space pirates grew nebulous over time.
As far as game design goes, Other M is basically a carbon copy of prior Metroids. The space station is one huge spaghetti pile of tunnels, corridors, and wide open spaces. As Samus receives new weapons and abilities, new areas become accessible. There is still a great deal of backtracking to be done. In classic Metroid style, most of Samus's powers are taken away at the beginning of the game, and you have to reclaim them.
You don't move unless I say so, and you don't fire until I say so.
The reasoning here actually makes more sense than in past games, and by the time the credits roll, you'll have upgraded your basic beam several times, and will have all her patented powers in tow. Health is set up differently in that it can only be replenished at save stations unless the bounty hunter is near death. At this point, players can point the Wii Remote at the ceiling and hold the A button to replenish a small part of it. Trying to recharge health with enemies lurking can be intense, but you'll also find yourself gaming the system by intentionally taking damage to get below the threshold to replenish. You'll also have an endless supply of missiles that are reloaded using the same technique. The campaign is not especially long and falls well short of the Prime games. Most will finish in well under 10 hours, and the theater and gallery options that unlock upon completion don't provide a lot of incentive to return.
None of the baby remained on me. I knew it to be true, but still couldn't help looking at my palm for a sign.
The design of Metroid Other M sticks to the tried and true, while simplifying the level design and how weapons are handled. You'll spend a lot less time wondering what to do or where to go than you did with the Prime series, while collecting missiles and health are not missed. Metroid Prime shocked with its first-person adventure gameplay, and Other M has a similar take on perspectives. Using just one Wii Remote, you have the option to go into first-person view at any time simply by pointing the remote at the screen. Otherwise, you play the game with the remote sideways. The transition from side-scrolling to the in-helmet view is as smooth as butter, but you can't move when looking through Samus's eyes. It makes the perspective practically unplayable in heavy combat situations, and basically relegates it to long-range room clearing and examining the environment. Scanning and logging what you see has been completely removed, but there are still plenty of hidden passageways to find missile, health, and recharge upgrades that you simply won't see unless you go into first person. There are also some sections of the game where you're forced into the view and aren't allowed to move on until you discover some investigative clue in the environment. It makes sense in theory, but it slows things down. Other M would be a better game without them.
My response was to become increasingly bitter.
With just one Wii Remote and limited buttons to work with, it only makes sense that things are simplified. The gameplay really hasn't suffered much for it. Things primarily go down on a 2D plane, which is a good thing because the only control you have for movement is the D-pad. It works great when going sideways or into the screen, but when you need to actually judge depth on some jumps or make fine adjustments, the lack of precision becomes a problem. Exactly where you can jump can also be confusing, thanks to a ton of invisible walls. That aside, the controls work great. Jump response is on point, first-person aiming is smooth and quick, and the game does an incredible job of dynamically shifting the camera to show you exactly what you need to see. This, in conjunction with the first-person option, ensures that you never feel the need to manually adjust it. Coming from the team that makes Ninja Gaiden, this is a big deal. Puzzles are few and far between, with most of the head-scratching coming in the form of trying to figure out where to go and how to get there. For longtime Metroid fans, the difficulty curve is just about perfect. There are a few bottlenecks to overcome with some boss fights, but it's almost always less about manual dexterity and more about finding the combination of attacks that works. Third-person shooting is almost too easy thanks to a generous auto-aim, making hallway fodder more of a nuisance than a challenge. Frequent save stations and checkpoints soften the blow even further. While Samus is tackling this mission along with a group of Galactic Federation soldiers, this is not a squad-based game. You rarely fight alongside them, leaving Samus to handle most of the heavy lifting. Ironically, being able to see Samus for most of the game goes a long way towards putting you behind the visor.
Leave the rest to me.
Metroid Other M's gameplay is a nice compromise between satisfying fans and opening up the series to a wider audience. The simplifications don't sacrifice much. The Morph Ball and her ship definitely take a back seat here, but it's to the benefit of the action. Other M is one sharp-looking game, particularly when viewed from the side angle. Though the geometry can come off as a bit simple in first person, the overall look is unique with vivid colors and smooth textures. Special effects abound, yet the engine only buckles in a couple fleeting moments. Attacks pack the appropriate visual punch, and the auto-aim in third person allows for some truly cinematic combat sequences. Though a few areas can be a bit garish, it's one of the better-looking Wii games on the market. A lot of time and money has obviously gone into the elaborate CG sequences. Their visual clarity is outstanding, and yet they fill the entire screen, avoiding the nasty black bars found in a lot of games for the platform. They've also been created rather intelligently so that the transition from pre-recorded footage to in-engine visuals is never startling.
No objections, of course.
If only the script were as strong.
If something like that happened again, I would hold fast to that glimmer of hope and try for redemption.
Load times are minimal, but you'll pause at some doors as the next section is built. The music toes the line with remixes of classic Metroid tunes, while stings, stabs, and bass hits accentuate the atmosphere. Metroid Other M is a successful experiment in shifting perspectives and reimagining how an old franchise can play. Just like the Prime trilogy, it manages to skirt the line between satisfying its fanbase and providing something unique. The decision to give Samus a voice is sure to be controversial thanks to the ho-hum script, and this, coupled with a plethora of side characters, clamps down on the feeling of isolation. Even so, it's a solid game, from top to bottom, that rolls the dice several times without them ever coming up snake eyes.
Mother, time to go.